Possible GTA suspect there now, 4730 Crystal Springs Drive in the parking lot above the merry-go-round. 2 males, no further description, adding striping to a black Cadillac four-door, possibly exchanging plates, vehicle license Utah 2904, in California, Paul William Nora 011, code 2 incident 3196.
Wilshire, units additional 211 in progress, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard.
1570, roger. All units, 1570 is following a code 37 vehicle, 77 Buick Regal 2-door. He is on the southbound Harbor Freeway from the Hollywood Freeway. It is a 2-door Buick Regal 227 Tom Zebra Paul has.
Southwest units, all units, citizen reports officer needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard. Citizen reports officer needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard. Code 3 incident 3142.
1181 in Hollywood, no Hollywood available, domestic violence. 5139 Fountain Avenue, code 2, RD is 669, apartment 8, incident 227. Wilshire, City, Wilshire, 211 GTA occurred, 3921 Wilshire Boulevard. Vehicle taken is an 84 Thunderbird white. Possible license 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415, 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415. Northbound Grammar Street, 5 to 10 minutes ago, 2 male Caucasians, 20 to 25 years, both had guns, number 1 wearing white pants and a black shirt. Incident 329, Wilshire, handling identified.
2845, possible code Tom 8 in Alvarado, 2879 en route, the 2-minute ETA.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the interview room. They're playing my song. Man, don't you just love that? I absolutely love it. Welcome to this Sunday evening. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you had a great week like I did, and had the opportunity to buy some real estate. And, you know, somebody's had a couple of people's had this week. I had great stuff going on at work and a lot to talk to some interesting characters. And, you know, the one thing about crime is job security. You never have to worry about it. Absolutely never have to worry about it. So I hope you guys had a marvelous Sunday. I've got a great program scheduled here for us this evening, and I hope we pick up something from each of us, i.e., we take a 30,000-foot view on how things are going in the Bryan Kohberger case, and we remember why we're here. In terms of, what we do here as podcasters as well as folks on YouTube. So it's really important, in my opinion, that we kind of level set some of the things going on, not only in, in social media, but I wanted to talk specifically tonight about the role of law enforcement officials in the Bryan Kohberger case specifically, and then correlate that to other high-profile cases. Because there is a whole new level of accusatory ideas that, law enforcement has to deal with. I mean, I think we can all agree that in today's society, everybody wants to be a star, right? And with the advent of cameras and, cell phones and really great ability to take pictures and then live stream videos. I mean, there's a whole industry of people that do nothing but follow law enforcement and that all they do is just criticize every move that they make. And I'll just give you a simple example. There are things going around right now, even in the Bryan Kohberger case right now, where, let's just talk about the many rumors that have taken place, and unspeculated, proof, for lack of a better term. The conspiracies, it started off with when this whole thing went down, the boyfriend did it, and then it was, no, it's a drug hit. That one seems to be regurgitating again. Then it was, well, no, the cops have done it, and they're covering up for this gigantic, drug cartel, undercover stuff. In my last video, I just covered, some stuff on that. Then it's like, now, the car is a different color green. It's a different color because of the lighting from the camera. There's little pumpkins that show those are orange. Yet when you see the video, they're white. Okay. And so therefore the car has got to be green. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight are things like that from an investigative aspect. Because if you go back and you look for a moment, when you see the Dateline program where they show that car, going down the hill and turning at a rapid rate of speed, I guess you could argue, yeah, well, that car is green. Okay. Unfortunately, those kind of cameras at night typically only see in black and white. And so the darker color cars would be correlated to darker colors, the blues, the reds, the greens, all of that. And then the lighter color cars will show up as lighter color cars, kind of like the white Elantra. I even had somebody criticize me the other day because I couldn't pronounce it right. Anyway, if we take that theory and say, okay, well, the camera has it wrong. Well, there's only one problem with that. And we could go bit by bit, moment by moment. If you look at the film of that car leaving, look to the left. There's a white truck. Okay. Somehow that camera got it right that was a white truck. Looks like a Ford F-150 or something parked in front of the house where the camera was. So the next morning, if you go back to the news footage, that truck is still white. So I think the camera got it right, and it's not an infrared camera. The infrared cameras for home use, it doesn't matter. It got it right. There's a white truck. There's a white car leaving, and you can see it on the news footage the following morning. So those are the kind of things I want to talk about tonight. And what's really interesting is we're in a different time where people just buy stuff hook, line, and sinker. And the one thing I wanted to really cover clearly this evening is what law enforcement does. And then I'm going to cover, in another episode, what the DA does. I may cover what the defense does. I haven't decided yet. I probably will. And what the court does. Remember the roles of our system are broken into up into various different concepts. One is the police. The second is the DA. The cops do their job. They hand it off to the DA. And then the DA starts to represent the family and the state. So the district attorney represents the family and the state. And then all the evidence through discovery process is brought in, and it's now the defense, once the defendant goes before the court and, puts in a plea, then the defense is assigned. And at that point, now the defense represents the defendant and the defendant's family because they're connected, just like the victim and the victim's family are being represented by the state. And now you have the courts, i.e. the judge, and the judge is going to be the protector of the trier of fact, i.e. the jury. And what a judge will do is make sure the process is running smoothly and then protect the information in relationship to what the jury hears and how they come to a decision. And he'll read jury instructions, and we've already seen motions where they're already talking about, what verbiage and that kind of stuff. So all of this stuff is how the system works in our country. And one of the things I wanted to talk about this evening is what are the roles of investigators? What are they supposed to do? And because, you would think there's enough chatter, for lack of a better term, that people believe that law enforcement got together and that they decided, okay, November 13th, 2022, we are going to let somebody whack 4 college students, and then we're going to cover it up because we're doing stuff on the campus working with the cartels in a fentanyl business, etc. You can see where this would go. Okay. And what's really interesting, I've been in this system a very long time. A couple of weekends. And it's really fascinating, though, the dynamic that social media has played in shifting the conversation away from these victims and into the prosecution or the defense. Now, what's interesting is people always critique me because they say, I'm not down the middle. Okay. I've made a career out of putting bracelets on people and you know, a lot of them are in prison. But then you get oh yeah, he was a dirty cop, and you know, he arrested all these other people, etc. No, but that's my point. Folks are making the point about who is the bad guy here. I am pro-police. I stick to the families, and I stick to law enforcement. And I critique them when they're wrong. Okay. And I critique them when they're right. So tonight we're going to talk about what the roles are. And as a result of that, I wanted to correlate that to a concept. And that concept is probable cause. So let's go back to November 13th, 2022. And I'm going to do this for DB, my buddy. You can be arrested in this country when law enforcement has probable cause to believe you've committed a crime in specific circumstances defined by law. And so here's a breakdown of what that really means. When police have evidence of reasonable belief that you committed a felony. Now, we're not talking about the defense's job. We're talking about our society has said there is a subgroup of officials, court officers, i.e. law enforcement, that are sworn in under the Constitution of the state that they work for and the city that they work for, or municipality, or sometimes marshal's offices or sheriff's offices, or, federal offices. Okay. And so as a result of that, this group must follow the rules. And that means they don't get to decide guilt or innocence. That's a job for the jury. But they do get to decide when they take away somebody's liberty and put them behind bars for the safety of all the other people within that community. So here's a hypothetical. Law enforcement officers show up on a 911 call to 1122 King Street, and there are 4 dead bodies. The role of law enforcement is to investigate that crime and build evidence that leads towards a reasonable belief that a person or individual or situation, there's enough probable cause that said that individual did that crime. And that can come from witnesses, physical evidence, credible statements. And in homicide, what you want to do is kind of put it all in a big bucket. And then you hand that off once you have this bucket that says a name on it and said all the evidence is pointing to, i.e., a sheath on next to a victim with DNA. And once that evidence is, processed, then you go towards the body and you get the individual and you take them into custody. Okay. Well, here's something that I think we forget. At that point, law enforcement is not objective. The investigation is objective. That's what I think sometimes folks get mixed up. That's where I think folks get confused. Because if an officer, hypothetically, and if you're a citizen and you pull a weapon on an officer, okay, bad things are going to happen to you. That's just the way it is. Okay. So it's incumbent upon that individual to use common sense and not do that. Okay. So let's fast forward then. If an officer sees somebody breaking the law or breaking into a car or stealing goods or anything like that, and there are witnesses who also come forward and corroborate that information, that is probable cause. And guess what? If you don't do that as a law enforcement officer, you think the leaker's in trouble? Well, there's all kinds of stuff in, federal law, Title 42, for an example, under the color of authority. You can go to prison. And it's ironic that, a lot of these officers who are on this case and other people like myself who report on them, they bring up all the stuff that as if they understand the rules, and they say, yeah, this guy or those people, it's a conspiracy to frame Bryan Kohberger. Well, I hope you have an open mind and you're listening, that I want to submit to you, what if it's probable cause to arrest? That the evidence is there to arrest him. And then you put that evidence in those buckets and hand it to the district attorney. Because at that point now you have a bigger conspiracy. You have Ann Taylor, who's committing a conspiracy. You have the district attorney committing a conspiracy. You have the judge committing a conspiracy. Because they all have the same evidence in front of them. They're all looking at it. But for some reason, everything gets parsed out back towards law enforcement. And they forget how you get arrested. Either by a warrant from the court, if it's a misdemeanor committed in the presence of a particular officer, a bench warrant from the court, and where the judge tells you, go get them. Or if you decide to walk out of the court, the judge tells the bailiff, hook them up. Or you, a citizen, can make an arrest. You can make an arrest. It's called a citizen's arrest. Now in California, if you witness something, a misdemeanor or somebody stealing something, the law allows you to use what force is necessary to detain that person for law enforcement. And then when you get there, when law enforcement gets there, they hand you a form. You sign the form that says, I have arrested this person. And then the officer is bound by law, by statute, to take that individual into custody and bring them to the magistrate. And then the system, the second part of our system, kicks in. Okay? Our system kicks in. And then the other way to get to make an arrest is exigent circumstances, i.e., let's say Bryan Kohberger was in the act of committing this horrendous crime, and a law enforcement officer saw it on the other side of a door, for an example. This officer would have had the authority to kick the door in and stop the crime. And the law gives them tools to do that. You know, escalation, even up to deadly force if necessary, to stop the crime, to save another life. And then the totality of the evidence points towards individuals that can be arrested, i.e., P. Diddy. There's a lot of evidence that he's facing right now. RICO charges, conspiracy, trafficking, 647A, 647B of the California Penal Code. He may even be looking at a 187 charge. And those of you who know. So I wanted to talk about, did law enforcement do we really believe that they had enough time to put this whole thing together? Because I think in the alternative suspect realm, we're going to hear about the Green Beret. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, we're going to hear about the drug theories that I went through the other day. I mean, for goodness sake, folks are even charging the family that one of the victim's dads, is involved with the slaughter of his own daughter. For 20-something years, he gets her to college, and then this is the time that he's going to take her out. I mean, it's just stuff that I think we have an obligation, we have an obligation to say, done. As Lady Chan says, any cases that individuals have been framed. Well, let me ask you, give me one. Give me one. Karen Reed's still going. So I don't know. I've been in this game a long time, and I don't see a whole bunch of law enforcement officers going to prison for framing people. Now, back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, in New York City, have cops been dirty? Of course. Of course. But far more individuals have actually committed the crime, and then they get booted on technicalities. And that's why I want to go a little bit further and correlate this into another very high-profile case. And I'm going to use tonight my experience, because, everybody is thinking that maybe, police, they get off so far that, it's time to frame Bryan. Okay. And, if that's the case, then you're going to have to hook up even Cy Ray, because he's seen the evidence. And if he's not saying or doing something, then he's contributing to the ongoing conspiracy. And that's an overt act. And he can be charged. Same with Ann Taylor. They're continuing on this conspiracy thought. I would just submit to you, it's none of that at all. I think Cy's a great guy. And I've met him at many Fusion Center conferences. He'll know what that is. He'll know a guy named Zach from Hooster. He'll know. So it's not about him. It's about the evidence. And in this case, this little boy went to the harbor, for an example. All he wanted to do was go to the bathroom. And this was the case where it started the family bathroom movement in the United States. And this little boy was there with his family, and he went into the right side of this bathroom down there to go use the urinal. While he was in there, there was a predator surveying the area. Sound familiar? And this predator had something on his mind, and that was to go after a victim. And this predator did everything in his power to find that opportunity. He even tried to attack another young person south of this scene, but he failed. But he tried. Now, when this all went down, we didn't have a lot of social media to say that, the police framed, this person. The police did this. The police did this. They missed the wrong guy. They got the wrong guy. Okay. Well, unfortunately, when the public says that, then what they're doing is they're re-victimizing the 4 college students in that house by even suggesting that there was this huge conspiracy of law enforcement that came in and is covering up this huge narcotics ring because there may have been narcotics in that house. You see where I'm going here tonight? The role of law enforcement is to seek the truth, whatever that truth is. And the role of the DA is to take that truth and prepare it and share it with the defense. And then the defense can take and do what they want with it, because that's the phase we're in right now. And then it goes to a jury. A jury is the decider of fact. Law enforcement's job is to say, this guy did it. We need to get this person off the street. And so let's put some bracelets on them and get them off the street before they hurt or kill somebody else. That's law enforcement's role. Just like in this case, this little boy went to this motorhome and sat with his mother. And she said, Matthew, what will you do if a stranger approaches you? And he said, Mom, I know exactly what to do. I am going to scream, help. And his mother gave him a gigantic hug and said, I love you, Matthew. Go play with your cousins. But just before he went out to play with his cousins, I'm going to show you a picture that's never been seen, that I have lived with because I stood over Matthew's body in that crime scene. And these are going to be the same type of pictures that the law enforcement officers who responded to 1122 King Lane, King Road, are also going to relive over and over again. This picture, Matthew is in the white t-shirt with the blue jeans and the Pendleton tied around his waist. Matthew Checky's life changed the country. His death was a result, or what came of it was the Matthew Checky Act, and then secondarily, family restrooms in the United States, where parents could take their children independently into a family restroom. It happened because of Matthew. This is his entire family. Everybody in this photograph ran into that bathroom and saw Matthew on that bathroom floor. Just like Dylan, just like Bethany, just like the law enforcement, first responders, the two friends on the phone, 911, what's your emergency? Everybody in this picture had the exact same trauma. The gal to the far right with the sunglasses is his aunt. He stood outside the bathroom door when the suspect stepped out after slaughtering this little boy who was standing at the urinal. And he decided, I'm going to have to kill her as well. But fortunately, she was allowed to live. Kind of like Bethany. The small minutia things in the world. It's not about clicks and views. It's about a responsibility to tell the truth. These are Matthew's shoes before he took off and ran around the building, unbeknownst to Aunt Gail. She followed him, but by then the predator was already in the bathroom, kind of like the house. And after they discovered him, the 911 calls were made. Now, what's crazy is people will argue, yeah, but that was immediate. Well, but you're forgetting. Nobody in this scenario and picture is intoxicated. In fact, Mom, who's taking the picture, had just had a conversation 15 minutes before his life was taken. Now, think about that. This was an extremely high-profile case. It changed the course of many lives, myself included. And why? Because a little boy went to use the bathroom. Just like college students went home, went to bed after a night of partying, and they woke up in a frenzy from a predator trying to kill them. Now, here's the irony. Somebody's saying, or there's a lot of things that float around in our society today that says, yeah, but you know, the DNA is circumstantial evidence. Really? Here was my evidence. He had this in his pocket. You have not seen this. Nobody has seen this. This was the weapon. And you'll notice there's transfer on that blade. I found that transfer in his pocket, inside of his pants. And we sent it to the lab. And guess what? It was Matthew's DNA. Go figure. You know what we didn't have back then, though? We didn't have people saying, no, it's not. We didn't have Twitter pages, Instagram pages saying, no, that's not Matthew's DNA. That's somebody else's. I think we need to get back to basics sometimes. And we have a responsibility as YouTubers to actually put information that's viable into the public's arena. And not information that confuses the truth about 4 innocent victims slaughtered at 1122 King Road. Now, the sad part is I have to turn off my comments because everybody that should be salting the fries at McDonald's shows up and they start, saying just crazy stuff about the victims and their families. And once I see that, I just turn it off. Okay. And because here is the suspect. Here's the bad guy. Okay. Here is the bad guy. And I could just switch these photographs, I'm sure of it. You know what? Today, we are creating fan clubs around these kind of guys and blaming law enforcement. Anybody see anything wrong with that in our culture, in our society? Does it lead towards what? I don't know. I don't know what it leads to anymore. But I can tell you, I have been around a couple of weekends around people like this. Look at his hand. Look at how just general, nothing special about him. But this young man was in the top 15% ACT scores in the country. He had an IQ, I think they estimated at 146. This is a young man that was brilliant. Just like Bryan Kohberger. In fact, they even said maybe he was on the autistic, spectrum because he was having conversations with God, because he was taking drugs, that he was, he had taken methamphetamine, that he had gone into the desert and, had this manifestation that God had told him, that he was to destroy society. And, the list goes on. It's an interesting correlation how the difference is people did not gather around him and say, go, go, go. Like they are without even thinking about the victims. Look at his hands. No evidence. No evidence. Did that mean he didn't commit the crime and that the cops put the knife in his pocket? Does that mean we got that wrong? You decide. A jury already has. But you decide on social media today. Would we have wanted him back in society? Because probable cause, remember, is a reasonable belief that he committed a felony, i.e., what's reasonable today? What is reasonable? This is the area where he tried to attack another young person. And then he got on a Greyhound bus and went to Los Angeles. And there he attacked another woman by the name of Maria Rosales. Stabbed her almost 19 times. Had we not captured him, he would have kept on doing it. And now here's the interesting part. When we did get him and we put him in the system, here's what the doctor said before trial. Look at all these dates and look at all of the medical opinions. There was defense, the court appointed, the prosecution, defense, court appointed, defense, court appointed, defense. And here's how they all came out in their opinion. And yes, she did survive. The woman in Los Angeles survived, thank goodness. But now we get into the experts. Let's always remember that it is not a law enforcement officer's job to determine guilt or innocence. It is an officer's job to take the preponderance of the evidence and the reasonable belief that an individual committed a crime, and it is an officer's duty to take that person into custody because you want to get them off the street, or they will go to Los Angeles and kill other people. And so when it goes to court, everything starts to have a paradigm shift. In court, it's a defense attorney's job, and I commend them for it, to represent the defendant no matter what. That's their job. And that's why they have attorney-client privilege. If the defendant behind the scenes says, I did it, I did all of it, that attorney is bound under our system to not say anything. They can't. So I don't always blame defense attorneys at all. And then the other side of that coin is the prosecution. If they have evidence that says this is the person, then it's their responsibility to make that evidence available to the defense so they can put their case together. And then they, in of themselves, have to operate from the evidence presented by who? Law enforcement authorities. So there's this perfect chain. And they call it chain of custody. The evidence chain is not broken because who ultimately decides? You. You. The jury. You decide. And you get to hear all the mental health professionals say from the court, well, I think he's not insane. From the court, a second one, I agree. He's not insane. From the prosecution, a third one, I agree. He's not insane. Now you get the defense. Oh, he's insane. And then you get another doctor from the defense. Oh, no question he's insane. And guess what? You get to hear from all 5 expert witnesses. And that's why I talked about the expert witness in my last video. Okay? That's going to say whatever the defense is going to present to them. And if that's the case, okay, it's not his fault or her fault. They have to make a living. And so the evidence gets promoted whatever direction the jury decides. And in this case, Wilson was found guilty, and he was not insane, of first-degree murder for killing this little boy. And he was given the death penalty. So when people say, you know, that McDonough guy doesn't know what he's talking about, apparently I do for this one and many others. And so I want to just think about why it's important, perception of not blaming law enforcement, but waiting until all of the facts are coming in, even though, you know, like Dateline, okay, so they got a leak. They had somebody that told them some information. Well, we can't blame them. That's their job. The public has a right to know in their minds. They went to journalism school for that. Now, does it mess up the timing or the problem with the court? Of course it does. And that's why Judge Hippler will get down to the bottom of it, whatever that means. Okay? But they're just the messenger. And you cannot shoot the messenger. Okay? This is Brandon being put into the car. That's my partner, the far right, Bill Robards and Tom Morgans and Vic Soto from our agency. This is the guy that today they would say he didn't do it. But behind the scenes, I would never ever show the photographs of that bathroom to anyone out of respect for their family and their mother and his mother. Ever. I will show one of my old partners, the guy in the motor helmet is Dave Grant, a dear friend. He passed away. He was killed in the line of duty. And that's John Lamb. Those of you who've watched my show for quite some time know John. And that's Sheila. These are all the real deal. Until you've stood by one of these and stood over hundreds of dead people, I would caution maybe we kind of tone it down a little and, kind of bring it into reality so that the family doesn't get lost in the reality, i.e., that Matthew doesn't get lost, or excuse me, Matthew, and that the four victims, Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, they don't get lost, and the narrative gets refocused. Because this is who counts. These families count. Now think about this picture, the power of this picture, of how precious this picture is to every one of these family members, and the power of one Instagram picture that Kaylee, Maddie, maybe Xana, maybe Ethan put out before they were taken off of this earth. This is the reason we need to be respectful and not come up with green cars, army men. The authorities are doing the right thing. The authorities will put the information before a jury, and then the jury will decide. Not us. I won't decide that. I refuse to decide that. 100%. Let me look over here for some comments. DB, yeah. There you go. I just gave him a shout out. Proud to be a member. Thank you so much. We're proud to have you here. Karen and I are grateful so much to have you here. Any cases that individuals been framed? Yeah, we've talked about that. And you want to know an interesting thing? This is a great point, Lady Chem. Okay. Has it ever happened? Yes, of course it's happened, right? But here's the opposite side of that question. Have they been arrested? The officers that did it? And I would submit to you the answer is yes. That's how they knew they were framed. They figured it out. Nobody wants bad law enforcement. We just don't want it. Nobody wants it. You don't want it. The public doesn't want it. I don't want it. Nobody wants it at all. And so, but to keep harping on it as if, it's a constant situation that's taking place. And, the Bryan Kohberger case that, the FBI is now framing him, through the cell phone tower information. Really? Did they frame Chad Daybell as well? Because by the way, it's the same team. It's the same guys and gals that testified in that case and did the work in Chad Daybell's case, but they can't do the work in Bryan Kohberger's case? Is that what is being suggested sometimes? Because it's confusing. You know, the cast team are the same folks. Apparently, they got Alex standing around the fire pit and Chad sitting in prison. So, I mean, that's really, you know, interesting. And you know, that now this name is coming up that folks, you know, to your point, Von Krul, people are saying that DM is involved in the Bryan Kohberger case, that this is all about her and, you know, some big narcotics drug hit. Have we really gone that far? That would be like saying Aunt Gail, the gal with the glasses who stood over her deceased nephew, was the one that got him in there just in time for Brandon Wilson to show up and kill her nephew. I know people aren't that shallow. At least I'm hoping they're not. But I don't. But then the other side of me is I don't know anymore, right? And if you want to see what Brandon did, I made a video of it. You can go watch it, of how he took this little boy's life. Now, I'm curious is if this deal goes, if he decides, Bryan, hey, you know what? This is getting too crazy. We are getting to a place where maybe they do have a lot of evidence. I don't know yet personally, but it certainly did look problematic. And if it gets to a place where a deal is on the table and he takes the deal, I hope the authorities go in and talk to him and videotape or, you know, put it on tape or digital how he did this. Because then other people can study this. Other PhD students who aren't going to kill people, potentially. Now, somebody, you know, people are going to be mad that I said that. Okay. Well, I think he did it. And that's why I'll never be on the jury. Just like I think P. Diddy did it to Cassie. I won't be on that jury either. And all the other murderers that I've arrested, I think they did it. That's why I was never on a jury. That's why I'll never be on a jury from here. Okay? And by the way, it's not my responsibility to be objective. I just broke down how law enforcement thinks. I think in terms of probable cause and evidence. And if the evidence is pointing that way, then I'll let the people that watch Luigi shoot the guy in the back figure that out for themselves. But for me and my house, I will serve the Lord. And if I see that guy pull and shoot and the guy drops, I don't care if he was a CEO. What I care about is his family. He had 3 boys and a wife, and it's over. They will never see their father again. All of the families of these 4 victims their lives have stopped in November of 2022. It's over for them. Their child will never, ever get past the age that they were when they died. Do you realize they've never had another birthday? Every one of these kids in this picture who walked in and saw their cousin, that's ingrained in them for the rest of their lives. Let's not transfer heroism to murderers. Let the system work, and let's honor the victims. The people will exchange the truth for a lie. It's more of a spiritual battle than most will admit. You know what, Michelle? I cannot disagree with that. I cannot disagree with that. Thank you, Jetta Girl, for your kindness to our channel. Thank you, Bonnie. Same. Keep rolling. Thank you, True Girl. Thank you, Lisa. My father was one of the first motor cops, vice and homicide detectives like you in Puerto Rico. 1936, 1959. You remind me of him, uncompromising about righteousness. He was my soft-spoken, loving, strong hero. Keep on keeping on. Thank you so much, Miss Kay. God bless your father and his service. And you are the fruits of his righteousness. Good for you. Muscles and mascara. I've always loved that. It's great to see you. Earth River, TRR #1. Thank you. We try. Let's see here. Framing in law enforcement has been linked to framing the person that did it when there isn't enough evidence. An ethical gray area. Great point. And you know where majority of that, if somebody is going to step over the line, do you know where it occurs? It occurs with drugs. That officer has a drug problem themselves. And, you know, they may, I can tell you, we've thrown cops in jail. I know I'm not going to name any names right now because he's in prison, but he was taking narcotics off of suspects and paying ladies of the evening for favors. And guess what? We got him. And there is a lot of that sometimes, no question about it. But here's the good news. They get caught. In something like this with Kohberger, it ain't happening. Nobody's covering for nobody. Because look what the judge is just trying to do. Let's just use that as a simple analogy. The judge is trying to find a leaker. Look how fired up he was the last couple of days, right? Agreed. This case, BK, hits close to home for me. I used to live in Moscow, Idaho, Emily, and the pool I would swim in is within a couple of blocks of that house. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Zelda. Okay, so because this is sometimes such a touchy subject, you know, it's not worth it to the families because, you know, folks come into the comment section and they quite frankly, they attack, you know, Kaylee's family, Maddie's family, you know, Dylan, the witnesses, and I just won't stand for it. So it's easier for me just to, you know, tell you guys up front, if you have a comment, you're more than welcome with the chat here. Say whatever's on your mind. I don't have enough time to read them anyway. They're going by too fast. That I won't let it sit there and memorialize just, you know, sometimes stuff that's just off the wall. So I hope you understand that. And I know most of the members here at TIR, you guys, we all get it. But hey, there's a lot coming on, in the future here. We got a lot, man, oh man, you got Lori, you've got all of the craziness going on with finding this leaker. I've had my own opinions about it. People have even accused me of being the leaker, okay. Like I want to go to jail. And by the way, here's a hint on that one. Dateline. Just giving you a hint, okay? And I'm sure the judge will get down to it and get into the nitty-gritty. So it's going to be really interesting to watch happen. So I just want every one of you to know that we appreciate you guys so much. And thank you so much for following us. It's always exciting to see how things unfold, but let's always remember that the role of law enforcement is to collect the evidence, interview the witnesses, do all the, the crime scene stuff, put it all together, and then hand it to the district attorney. And in smaller agencies, sometimes they don't have district attorney, DAIs, district attorney investigators. So the case agent and the other law enforcement agencies end up still carrying the burden of investigation. Now, where I came from, obviously a much larger jurisdiction, we could hand it off to the DA's office, and then the DAIs would take over and tie up any loose ends if there were any. And always remember also, it takes a long time to get reports back sometimes. So even though the defense says, we don't have this, we don't have that, I was pretty surprised they gave them all that terabytes of data. I'm still interested in learning about what kind of inappropriate material that Dateline said he was watching, because I'm going to be on the record again of saying, man, I'll guarantee you it's going to be seriously violent. Seriously violent. That's just a guess with my experience. Everybody that I've ever talked to that has committed these types of situations like this, where they've, killed a woman, and John in that picture, in the police magazine picture, we had a caper. He was a case agent where a woman was just brutally murdered. And, the suspect, you can just go to their computers and download it, and it's horrible. So it will not surprise me in any way, shape, or form the magnitude of the amount of information that's going to be on his computers. And that's why I've always been curious. Remember, we all talked about, why did the defense go to his apartment and take his TV, his smart TV? Remember, it was the defense investigators that did that, not the authorities. So here's a question for those who are conspirators, the conspiracy. What's he hiding? Asking for a friend. All right, folks, thank you so much for this wonderful Sunday evening together. We got a lot of information out there. Thank you for being who you are. We sure appreciate you. And we're going to catch you on the next one. Aloha. Be kind and considerate one to another. Talk soon.
Hard working every day. I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, yeah. that plane now. We're taking away, yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away, yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away, yeah, we're going away. You and me, feeling the sun on my face in a while.